Hello, and welcome to a short homily for Proper 24 Year A. Our readings for today are Isaiah 45, 1 through 7, Psalm 96, verses 1 through 13, 1 Thessalonians 1, 1 through 10, and Matthew 22, 15 through 22. Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. The story I've shared before, many years ago, nearly 30 in fact. I was asked by the priest at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Evanston, Wyoming, to build a baptismal font to replace the old and dilapidated font that had been there since the late 1800s, I imagine. He handed me a stainless steel bowl, probably purchased at Walmart, and said, "Build a font around this." I looked at the construction of the inside of the church I was born and raised in and baptized in myself, and came up with what I thought was a rather nice baptismal font design. Had an octagonal top and a square base with a locking cupboard to hold water, and clawfoot legs on casters so it could be rolled around. A few weeks after I finished construction of the baptismal font, perhaps months, the priest called me and asked me to come to church that next Sunday. He said, "We're going to baptize a baby on the font you built, and I'd like you to be recognized for its construction." So I did. I came to church that Sunday, married to my second wife at the time. And after the baby was baptized, I was recognized for the font's construction. It was rather a special time for me. Baptism has always played an important role since that time, well, before that really, and in my ministry. Since that day, long ago, I've been personally blessed to baptize over 50 people on the same baptismal font that I was asked to build so many years ago. It all, in a sense, ties in with promises I made to God and how I intended to uphold those promises. If you're curious, the promises I made during both of my previous marriages were that I would have a woman that loved me as much as I loved her. You see, it was very clear and painfully so early on in both marriages that the women I had married did not love me like I loved them. They had no intent of a life of raising children and growing old together. Sometime after my second divorce, my mother gave me a call and said, "I want you to come to church on Sunday." Being the smart guy I was at the time, I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, there's a young woman I'd like you to meet." "Okay," I said, "how many children does she have?" My mom, frustrated with me, says, "Only one." The fact of the matter is, a young guy twice divorced is far less desirable in today's day and age than a young unmarried mother. Needless to say, and this is only part of the story, I did go to church that Sunday. And when I walked into the church, my mother and my Aunt Joyce were there and introduced me to this lovely young lady and her beautiful baby boy. And I must admit, the baby boy, Joshua, I fell in love with him at first sight. I actually had to date his mother a time or two to fall in love with her, and the rest is history. What I didn't know at the time, I didn't know until many months later, is that the first baby baptized on the font I built was my oldest son, Joshua, and I was there for his baptism. Now, tell me that God didn't play a part in that. The point I'm trying to make is that even when we think we're in control of our lives, circumstances often prove otherwise. In this case, and to be honest, many times over the course of my life, when I may be inclined to believe is under my control is really in God's hands, and God reminds me. Although not the entire story, the story of how I met my wife and oldest son is part of why I became a priest and part of why I dedicate my life to the service of others. I'm upholding my end of the bargain I made with God when I was asking Him for a wife that loved me as much as I loved her, and 4 children. Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. In our gospel today, Jesus, holding up the coin, asked, "Whose likeness or image is this?" The image of Caesar was imprinted only upon coins. The coins we use today often have images of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John F. Kennedy, and other prominent historical leaders. But, like my oldest son Joshua's image of the first time I met him is still emblazoned in my mind, the image of God is inbuilt upon every human life. Caesar seems to have a claim on much of our lives. We pay our taxes, we follow the laws, we even serve in our country's military. We all feel burdened with claims upon our time, our finances, and energy, especially during times like this, living in a pandemic. This is a simple fact of life on earth. When working toward, as I explained last week, the ultimate goal, our heavenly reward, we find liberation in the realization that there is truly only one claim upon our lives, loving service to God and to our neighbor. Everything belongs to God. The things that Caesar claims are merely on loan. God's mark is upon every particle of our being. All that we are and all that we have belongs to God, and we belong to God not as slaves, but as children. We are liberated, not burdened, when we render to God that which belongs to God. Amen.